Hello, welcome to Great Insights. We're doing a little family time looking at the roles of men and women, and we're going to be looking at um, Alison Armstrong's discussion about what men and women secretly want but won't say. So let's go forward here, and hope you enjoy my time with my family discussing these things and bring some benefit to you.
Happiness has no survival purpose. Happiness is a spiritual quality.
What do terms like toxic masculinity do to men today? Is it real?
No, not unless toxic femininity is real.
Well, I would.
That's an important discussion right there, right? Toxic masculinity. In order to discredit um, wisdom or truth or goodness or something that's good that God has made good, people will use terms like narcissism or toxic masculinity and then take the actual legitimate traits of masculinity and call it toxic masculinity because it doesn't fit into um, the modern day liberal, by the way, views. When people say things aren't PC or politically correct, what they mean is they're not politically correct to the those who are anti-truth, anti-God, those who are postmodern thinkers, as opposed to those who have a politics that is in line with God's truth, right? So for something to be PC or politically correct, for some reason, the liberals think that their politics is the correct one, and in reality, their politics is the lie. And anything that is adverse to what God teaches from His Word about men and women, or culture, or society in any way, is a lie. Therefore, their politics is not politically correct. And so we hold the actual politically correct view as opposed to them, and so that's important to recognize. And by recognizing that, then you have to redefine your terms, such as toxic masculinity, which is, again, anytime you want to discredit or shorten an argument or eliminate the basis to even have an argument, what you do is you put together what is known as the straw man argument, where you just build a false pretense, a straw man, and give it a title, and then that way you can, throw darts at it and throw insults at it and break it down in such a way as to discredit that position. But in reality, it's just an evil practice in order to try to win an argument against a false pretense. That makes sense? So let's continue.
I would say that is real, actually.
Men hold themselves to godlike standards, and they experience so much shame for failing to be that good, because men are overwhelmed by women's expectations, and women are over.
You have any statement that is a true statement? Men in general, if they're not in our day perverted, but even if they are to some degree, men in general, though they're born into sin, do hold themselves to a very high standard of wanting to do what is natural to them. They tend to be naive in that when they're young, they want to immediately think in terms of providing, protecting, chivalry, and they can apply that sometimes in a very foolish way, as opposed to in a wise way. But nonetheless, it is true that men generally have integrity when it comes to the approach to guiding the society. In fact, the society is based around, or a proper society is based around the contract between men that they will create amongst themselves a stable environment for women and their children to go to the grocery store and not be harmed. A society that doesn't have that proper contract is not a society anymore. It's a godless, revelry-based foolishness. And that's what you see going on in a lot of the European countries right now, some of our cities, where that's why it's important to it's important to dial in your understanding of what God defines as a man, so that when the culture denies it or tries to change it, you can value the uh, the masculinity-driven society as opposed to one that's confused by a feminine, compassionate concept. And what I mean by that is I saw an interview the other day of a woman, and maybe we'll pull it up and look at it at some point. I saw an interview the other day of a woman who was being interviewed, and she said she was defending illegals coming over the border and who were who had records, evil records of being murderers, rapists. And there was one guy who was interviewed and said, if you come across the border, will you seek to rape young girls? And he said, yes, of course I will, because he believed it was a religious right. And so the woman said, yeah, but he hasn't done it. But he said he would. She goes, yeah, but he didn't do it. Therefore, he should be let into the country. It's like, so the logic that's a perverted form of the compassionate feminine disposition, but it does come from a feminine disposition. I don't think there's a normal man on the earth that would think that's a logical thing. If you break that down and take that into your home, right? You wouldn't say, if a guy says, I'm going to harm you, kill you, rape you if you let me into your house, would you do it? It's like, no, of course not. That's absurd. So why then the country? Right? Someone must feel very protected against that and let that kind of harm come upon someone else but not them, for them to allow them into the country without the thought of someone, without the thought of people need to be protected from that kind of mentality. I get it that people have an entitlement in other countries where it's not a toxic masculinity, it's just an evil expression of their traditions concerning men and women. And so they bring that over in various, like Islam and other religions that bring that kind of madness over here.
By what we expect a man to expect of us. Attention is a survival need for us. We think if you're not paying attention, I'll die. But men don't know that the kind of attention matters. This is why I said we can't be happy until we feel safe. One comes before the other.
What do men actually want?
They want their lives to matter.
What?
Women, she said, women can't feel happy unless they feel safe. That's an important statement, and I'm sure she's going to talk about it more, but the reality is that if a woman doesn't know, if she's feral, right? If she's feral, that is to say, if she has not articulated what makes me feel safe, right? And do I believe this man is committed to that? If she hasn't come to terms with that, then it's a running tab. It never closes. The water never turns off. And so this feeling of unsafe feeling never goes away. There's a point where a woman has to come to a conclusion mentally of when do I feel safe, and therefore now I can relax, right? And that way they're not constantly going to the next thing and looking to the next thing and writing their emotions and their desires and their passions.
I say that this is where faith comes in, because the more you reason it out, there is no end to safety. Like there's, as a woman, I can think that there's nothing in the world that can make you safe enough. There's no amount of wealth that can be destroyed.
Right.
There's no walls that you can build that can't be destroyed. So really, the only answer is Christ.
Right, and ultimately, it's Christ, because Christ is what's going to bless the man. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ and God the Father is what's going to bless the man in order to accomplish a safe environment for the home, which is why it's important for women to listen to their husbands and daughters to listen to their fathers, because they are wise and understand, and their gut feeling sometimes says, no, I don't want you to go there, or you need to take someone else with you, or you need to make sure you're dressed differently, things like that, in order to not put yourself in harm's way. because it's foolish when people want to be safe, but then they want to throw themselves out there into foolish context that would put them in harm's way as well. But yes, without faith in Christ, yeah, how are you going to ever be safe, right? And especially women who have, through the years, whether their father left, or when they were young and they didn't have a lot of money, they watched their mother struggle, or a woman who's divorced, or her mother taught her never trust a man. And so they have this complex of never being relaxed. Even they can't, stay at home. They have to get a job. They have to work. They have to provide for themselves. They sneak their husband's money into secret accounts. There are all these things that women will do in evil ways because they just don't trust God. They don't trust Christ Jesus to bless them and to care for them if things go awry. They're God's children. He's going to care for them. He said he knows our needs before we ask. He knows the hairs on our head, the number of them, right? He loves us more than he loves the birds, and he loves us more than he does the flowers, and yet he cares for them. And so if you don't have faith, then you're going to have a really hard time feeling secure. I think that's why a lot of women today are looking for a man who's already attained to wealth, because they're hoping that will be their security, and of course it won't be. Right. Because if they don't feel secure within themselves that God loves them, is going to care for them, even if things go wrong with the man, then the man's not going to make them feel safe at all. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah.
Do women actually want?
What do women want? Oh, brother.
Last year, I talked with Allison Armstrong about the biggest mistakes that women make with men, and it was one of our most viewed and most liked podcasts to date. One commenter said, as a man, I feel like I'm a spy, peeking into the thoughts of women. Another said, as a young man at 23, this made my eyes tear up almost every minute. For the first time in ages, I feel understood. And one woman said, this conversation has helped my marriage in just 2 days. Today, Allison and I are together again to talk about what men and women really want, why safety is so important for women, and why men need women to be playful, and most importantly, what does it mean to be a queen or a king. On this show, we're trying to live masculinity and femininity to the utmost, to be true kings and queens, not to be the counterfeit versions that are pushed from the far left or the far right. Now, Allison and I don't see eye to eye on every point and every topic, but I think she has much needed wisdom that can help heal the divide between men and women. And that's what this is all about. If this message resonates with you, please double check that you're actually subscribed to the channel here on YouTube or following over on podcast apps. But also, if a friend or a family member comes to mind while you're listening to this, please pause the episode and share it with them, and then come back. And lastly, we love comments on this channel. Do you like something about this episode? Dislike something, or are you just having a good or bad day? Leave a comment below on YouTube or podcasts. Welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Allison Armstrong, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I love that I'm here with you.
It's lovely to see you again. Allison, you have spent decades now studying the relationship between men and women, and during that time, you have watched the relationships at large deteriorate. There's more chaos, more confusion, more misunderstanding, maybe than ever before. Why is it, in your view, that women and men misunderstand each other so badly today?
I just have to say, Lila, I wish it was new. When I started studying men in 1991, women were like, what would you ever do that for? They're beastly, right? It just was, it was more like a quiet cancer than the adversarial relationship between men and women. It was destroying things right and left, but nobody knew why. Women just thought men should change, and men were wondering why am I not just okay with a woman? Why do I have to change? And the internet, I think, is amplified. It's amplified what's been there for millennia. And to answer your question directly, I think the biggest mischief maker is the assumption, assertion, expectation that we are the same. That we are
Well,
the
that's
same. We're supposed to be the same.
right.
And women, the gentler, more loving, more evolved sex should lead the way.
Yeah, here's part of the problem is this is where I said the word naive earlier about men, because men tend to be naive concerning their understanding of women. It's important for you all to know your basic instincts, because I have many daughters here, one male, but you better be paying attention, son, or you're going to get run over. Because men naively think that women will be reasonable or sensible, which is why Titus 2 tells the older women to teach the younger women to, love their husbands, love their children, and be sensible, right? Sensible. Why the word sensible? Because sensible is something they have to work hard to become, because women are survivalists, right? They're designed to survive. They're not designed to fight by nature. Women today get this idea in their head, that they could be warriors and whatnot, and then some skinny little dude knocks them down. It's really easy to understand the difference between men and women when it comes to seeing that in action, and the foolishness of women thinking that they have that, that's their position until primitive environments take place. When primitive environments take place, if there was a massive, terrible thing that happened around here, women would be thinking immediately, how do I protect myself? How do I survive? They wouldn't be going out picking fights. People only pick fights if they think that the government's behind them or their society's behind them, and they're not going to get punched. If there's a sense of chivalry, right? Like a woman can hit on a man in public, or in private, but the man can't hit back. And because of that, now the woman has this idea that she can just go out and hit some dude. It's just ridiculous, right? So it's in that context that it builds a culture that is perverted to think that that's normal for women, but it's not normal for women. Going to what she was saying, they're very, very different. Men and women are very different. Men are meant to protect, provide, and to lead a wife and a woman and his family. And women are designed to, by God, to forage, if you will, like she's going to talk about, to care for the home, to nest, as women do. They nest when they have kids. They're naturally predisposed to want to have kids. That's part of their makeup. Just like we saw our cat go into heat recently, and what does she do? She's just going around everywhere, just kind of purring up against your leg and whatnot. Like, this is time. It's time. So every young person goes through that and has to manage that reality, that you're made. That's the difference between men and women. Women will want to have sexual relations because that's their instinct, like the cat. But it's on a cycle. It goes on, it goes off. If they have a desire for it, it's to have a baby as a primary inference, not just for enjoyment. Whereas a man, it's more to procreate, so it's more of an enjoyable, more of a perpetual reality. So there's a difference between the two people, and you can't care for each other. If a man thinks that a woman is like him, then he's going to be sorely disappointed when it comes to sensual things or reasonable aspects or fight or stability. If he doesn't understand that she's designed to be a survivalist, she's going to hide behind the man in the alley, whereas the man's going to step up and fight for his woman or even for some stranger, right? Women are usually not going to go and protect some stranger. They're going to run if they see some ruckus going on, whereas a man's like, oh man, now I've got to get involved and care for this person who's being hurt or being attacked in an inappropriate way. whereas a woman's designed to hide or maybe yell and scream and stop, but kind of backing up and staying away and staying out of harm's way, because that's their normal predisposition. It's not bad, it's the way they're designed. And that's because, they got to survive the war, they've got to take care of the kids, they got to keep humanity going forward and be able to have babies, all that stuff. So men and women are different. If the man thinks that a woman is like him, then he's going to reason with her in such a way that, or expect her to be reasonable back in such a way that it's like talking to another man who's not afraid of the future, who's not afraid. Men tend to be hopeful. They get off the boat, they get their axe, they go off and they say, well, got to go out and build a tree, and cut down a tree, build a house from these trees. And they're listening for an animal, and they're going to fight off the bad guys and whatever else, and they're just doing their thing. That's not the way the woman's designed, right? She's going to be terrified of that circumstance, right? And so, in a general sense, you always see that on these survivor shows, right? They have the men's camp and the women's camp. What inevitably ends up happening is the women go over here and find the men's camp. They're like, I'm shameless now. I'm like, yep. That's the general flow of things, right? So understanding the difference between men and women is very important. A man is this, even if they're undeveloped dude, a young guy, there's still, every man has the potential, the wiring, if you will, the programmed of protect, provide, care, lead the woman. And the woman will often challenge that in the man because she's trying to see if he can defeat her. And if he can defeat her, that means he can defeat others. And if he can defeat others, that means she's protected. And so if she doesn't understand that about herself and gets into a habit of that, she just becomes a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal, right? A woman that you want to sit on the rooftop and get away from, or be in the desert and get away from, or you want to be in the corner house and get away from. So a woman needs to come to understand that, though, again, when does your fear stop? When does your self-preservation stop? When do you choose to trust the guy for provision, for protection, and for leadership? Some women almost never come to a peace about that, and therefore they're always hyped up, as opposed to, no, I trust God through my husband, right? I trust God to provide through my husband, protect through my husband. I trust Him to lead through my husband, even if a woman doesn't understand it or would do it differently, or would, in her panic, want things to be done differently. Could you imagine what Peter's wife felt when he gave up everything and left his father and the boats and the company, James and John as well? They left their job. And just started following this dude around named Jesus all over the place. Could you imagine what their women felt like? I'm sure they were like, oh, sure, that's a great idea. You left the family business. Was Sarah the same way? She had to follow Abraham. It was more primitive times, and women didn't have as much power to sort of create chaos back in those days. But nonetheless, we're talking about the way they felt, right? Not how much damage they could do from a societal standpoint. And so they're very different, men and women different. And so if you don't understand that, if women don't understand that a man doesn't care about the fear, he cares about moving forward. He cares about thinking in terms of just tracking forward as opposed to being stuck in this perpetual what-if mode, right? A man doesn't care about what-ifs, and if he does, it means he's raised by a woman and he needs to figure it out, right? Find a male mentor. But even so, if he was raised by a woman and has feminine type qualities that he shouldn't have, he's still a man underneath the blanket, if you will, underneath the cloak of that iniquity that was passed on to him from being raised by a woman. And that's why it frustrates men who are raised by women without a strong father, because they internally know and feel like a man, but they've been convinced that they have to behave like a woman. And it creates a tremendous amount of frustration and anger and resentment inside of the man. And they don't understand why. But they will defend it because it's their identity, right? Anyway.
In how we should all be. And yeah, there's so much that everything that's male or masculine is wrong. And that's how I was when I found out I was bringing out the worst in men and thinking that that was who men are. What I brought out in them, I thought that's who they really were, and the rest was all fake. It was all a con. So it's really loud now. A good thing, though, Lila, about how blown it up is now, is because it's become louder, it's also become more visible, and women are opting out. Women like watch a conversation between you and I where there was so much practical advice for women, you know, don't worry about them loving you. They already love you. Right? So, and just the response, I checked it just before we started, 644,000.
One of the things she just said is, don't worry about them loving you. They already love you. Men instinctively have this ridiculous, unnatural desire to love a woman that they are devoted to, regardless of how well they're treated by the woman, and regardless of how intelligent they are, how well trained they are. They have this innate desire to love the woman, not necessarily like the woman, but they will push past the like. Whereas a woman feels like, you know, if you don't like her, you don't love her, but that's not the case. A man will be chivalrous, protect, provide, care, lead, even if he doesn't like the person anymore. He will continue to do that until, obviously, there's some betrayal of whatever measure that person feels like is deems necessary to remove himself from that relationship. But even then, just like the song in Journey, was it? What is it?
Who's crying now? Or
No, yeah. Separate, was it Separate Ways? Yeah, he's in that song. You hear, he's wishing her well. He says, "I'll always love you," kind of thing. Men are often that way because when you've poured your heart into someone, you always think in terms of wanting the best for them, even if it's not with you. Even if someone's, that's why you see men often like they're hurt if they're cheated on or whatever. But they'll be like, well, I wish her happiness, and they'll move on. You know, because they're that's just the nature of a man. He's a different animal. So what she's saying is true. Men have this. Their love doesn't wane, whereas at least from a survivalist standpoint, women's love often will wane based upon how secure they feel or how safe they feel. They'll again, women look for the alpha male to protect them, and that they use that in everyday life. Like a plumber could come over, or a contractor, if the husband has a certain plan for his house and the contractor throws up his ideas, the woman will instinctively, without knowing it, emotionally side with the alpha male in the room, which would be the intellectual one, the one who is the plumber, who does it for a living. Well, he does it for a living, hon. He knows what he's talking about. We should follow what he says, right? Or the contractor, well, he's the one who knows what he's doing. He knows the codes and whatnot, and so we should do what he says because, you know, he's the alpha male. She doesn't realize she's wanting to follow the alpha male. Her love is on the basis of a natural instinct of follow the alpha male. And so if a woman doesn't know that, if she's not aware that she has that instinct to follow the alpha male, then she will perpetually betray her husband in contexts that seem simple and seem like they wouldn't be that big of a deal, but they're a huge deal because the betrayal of the relationship of trust from the woman to the man. And so this is what she's talking about too as well, and throughout this series.
Views on YouTube of our first conversation as of this morning. But so women are recognizing they're like, this isn't working. This isn't getting us anywhere. I want something different. Who's got something different? And thanks to conversation.
What she means by that is it's not working for me. And you've seen me, have to counsel many people. And from my experience through all the 36 years of being in ministry, is women tend to look for, give me the information I need to get what I want out of my husband. As opposed to, that's what she means by this is not working. In other words, it's not getting me what I want, which is control. So that way I can feel safe because I'm in perpetual control, which then, of course, doesn't make them feel safe because now they have a man they can't trust because they're in control. And if a man gives the woman control, then they have no respect for them. They have no honor for them. And therefore they lose their sensual love, which is why sexless marriage happens a lot of times. Not only, but sometimes. And why the relationship is stressed. So if a woman is in a mode of seeking to be in control, she won't say that. Oh no, I'm seeking to serve my husband. I'm seeking I'm here to support him. But by support, she means I need to figure out a way to do what I see is best in the relationship. That's serving him because he's too stupid, right? Because you look at all the shows and the movies and whatever, the men are the stupid ones, right? And the kids or the wife is the smart ones, And so the way society has taught everybody to think is men are stupid, they can't be trusted, and therefore you have to seek to control them in order to feel safe. And that's not the case. You have to trust God. If you pick a man and you're married to him, you have to trust God that God will lead you through that man. That's why it says, humble yourself, subject yourself to your husband without being frightened by any fear in 1 Peter chapter 3, right? Without being frightened by any fear. Because that's the primary survival instinct of a woman, to be afraid, to listen carefully, to forage, to be on guard, to always be aware of what could harm them. Whereas a man's is not so much that way. If a man is alone and out and about, he tends not to think about his safety. Men tend to only think about safety whenever a woman is with them, right? I.e., look at how stupid dudes are, right? They jump their motorcycles, i.e. me, or CFC, with me, chiefly moi, doing crazy stuff my whole life. I never thought about danger, right? I thought about, how big of a ramp could I make? How fast could I go? How hard could I hit it? I never thought about, will my suspension handle this? I didn't have suspension on a bike back then. There was no such thing as suspension, right? It was just BMX bikes in the 80s, So you just hit the ramp, and then somewhere in the midst of flying through the air, you begin to think, oh no, I'm going to hit the ground, and this could hurt, right? So then you start thinking about how to land, and you explode and get road rash all over your face and back and whatnot, right? So you do crazy things, or jump my motorcycle. Would never think about it. You just jump. How I never thought about, when I first started jumping my motorcycle as a little kid, I never thought about the landing. I thought about the takeoff and how exciting that was going to be. And the landing was like an afterthought. I'll get there, right? When we get there, we'll figure that out. And so that's the way a man thinks. That's why you see, like, hey, Billy Bob, watch this, hold my beer. And then they have the, quote, hold the beer moment and blow up something. Watch this. Right. So men tend to think about fun. They tend to think about excitement, passion, some kind of forward progress, some adventure. They don't tend to think about fear, which is why some of them get eaten by a bear because they're dumb. But what's this? Be friends with this bear here. Next thing you know, they're dead. So, but that's the weakness of man, right? He might need a woman nearby that says, you might not want to try to make friends with the bear. Probably going to eat you. Like,
heartlessly while you lay there and scream. So these things happen, and you don't want to be that guy, right? So men are different than women. They tend to think about what can they go out and do some great thing, and women tend to think about how can I be preserved and controlled. And that's why she said that women are like, this isn't working for me. Of course it isn't working for her. Every time I go through and teach through Ephesians 5 in some counseling session, the woman says, it just feels like you're only talking to me. Like, this is primarily about the husband and his leadership and his responsibility over the home. But to mention her responsibility at all of a sudden it's all about her. All about her. You know? It's like, man, oh man, I get it. And what do I see every time? Every single time. She's freaking out because she's losing control, and she might have to trust God. She might have to trust her husband, right? And if she's not aware of her survival instincts, her feelings are so strong, she'll be convinced that she's right until death. Thus, women will abandon ship and say, this isn't working for me. Why? Because their emotions are so strong to survive, to be in control, because of their fears that they secretly have, they don't know, and they would deny that they have, that they're looking for another solution. And guess what, women? You'll never find another solution. There is no other solution. There's just line up with what God says to be the way, and truly you find peace and joy and happiness. The kingdom of heaven is not about eating and drinking, but about righteousness, joy, and peace. And when you line yourself up with the way God has designed the family to be, you can attain to that thing that you want so desperately: righteousness, doing what's right, joy, and peacefulness. So let's go.
Conversations like we had, people are finding, there's something different, and there's hope, and it's also practical. And I love the context and then the practical to do. And so it hurts. It's a hurtful time, and many women don't understand why men.
She says it's hurtful. It's hurtful to her because she's been on both sides of the fence. You know, she's seen both sides, where she was the woman who was skeptical years and years ago about her testimony and didn't understand men, and now she does. And so now she's hurting for women because women don't get it, and they're looking for other solutions other than true wisdom, looking at the good qualities in the woman. Like the fear of the woman can be, like I said, save the man's life. He's a little bit too feral, right? But also can keep their kids from ever playing sports, right? Oh, he might hurt himself. You know, it's like, all right, women, out. There's a reason why the Spartans took their kids away from the moms and took them out away so they could train them, because otherwise the women would be, don't let them fight with the sticks. They can hurt themselves. It's like, yeah, all right. Bye-bye. Get away. Go take care of stuff, because they're not made for it, right? They're not made for it. Even if you mentally know that you should support it, and when you see it in action, your emotions are going to be like, oh, inside of you. Like, all of you have been trained to be like tough and, yes, support little Johnny and whatever. But if you see it in action, you might find yourself being a little bit surprised at how the mama bear comes out, and how your initial thoughts of opposition or criticism will come out, rather than just being quiet about what's going on and trusting the process and seeing the things that are going on, and being slow to speak, right, and slow to passion, as James says.
Reacting so loudly, because that's gotten amplified as well.
Women are
but I
reacting
know
loudly.
how they're being hurt. I know both sides. I know both sides, and how so much is first it's a misperception, like we're looking at a hairy woman or a scattered man.
Right.
And
Or
they
East
wonder, why
Coast
can't we
party
just
thinks that-
focus? And we're wondering, why can't they just be nice?
Right. Right. Exactly what she was saying. What I was saying is if a woman sees a man as just being a hairy woman, you know, that's going to be a bad day for her, because she's going to keep thinking, why doesn't he feel the way I feel? You know, and therefore, because he's not afraid, therefore he's mean.
And there's a flip side to that. A man looking at a woman as a skinny man.
Yeah. That's what we talked about there earlier.
Emotionally indulgent man. I think is what
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
You're like a weak man, right? You can't see a woman as a weak man.
Yeah.
You have to value the woman's natural instincts, but any natural instinct, untamed, unbroken, is terrible, right? If you get a dog that's a feral dog, that it's very hard to tame that dog. There's no trust, right? You might feed them. They might come for food, but, you know, we'll let you pet them, they growl at you, whatever. Or the cat that we had adopted when we moved into this house, that we got the feral cat. And we did somehow make the slightest bit of effort to inroad to become friends with this cat. It allowed us to touch it, just barely, and run. And it was our friend at a distance, but it was feral. Whereas the cat we have now is like part of the family. Why? Well, one was raised from birth as part of the family. The other one we inherited from the woods in the back, you know. So we tamed her, but she never was tamed, right?
Well, I mean,
No, the house cat, yeah. And the irony is that one was a feral cat, right? She was born under somebody's porch, and we rescued her and took her in. And so she was a feral cat, but it shows that the difference is how much time you spent in your youth feral. So we're not cats and dogs. So we're made in God's image, and therefore we can think, and we can unferalize ourselves, if you will. We can mature out of being instinctive in our behaviors, instinct-driven, if you will, by our behaviors, and be rational. That's why it says teaching older women likewise be reverent, which is respectful, in their behavior, not malicious gossips, enslaved to much wine, blah, blah, blah. He says, so that it may encourage the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be, the next word is sensible. Sensible. And so that's important. Of course, pure workers at home, but the key is the sensibleness, because sensible means you're taming your feral instincts. The ones that God gave you to survive, that are good, but untamed, unmolded by truth, they're bad. Any kind of feral instinct unmolded by truth is bad. A man's feral instinct to be courageous and blow themselves up, right, on a four-wheeler, you know, is dumb, right? You got to use brains. You got to either put the gear on or make sure you dial everything in. I was left to myself as a kid, so I was always exploding myself on a bike or a motorcycle or doing whatever, jumping off of a roof into a tree or something like that, and just flipping off the limb. I did all kind of crazy stuff as a kid. Why? Nobody told me that, you know, I just had to learn the hard way, and I had a hard head, I guess. I just kept doing, well, the next thing, right? I didn't die. I guess I was okay. I only got knocked out for 15 minutes. No big deal, right? Went blind. Went blind once. Was blind for a good long time, till it all slowly came back. Understanding the difference between the two are very important.
And pay attention and listen to what I'm saying and remember it, for gosh sakes.
Just some myth busting. You already started it, the myth busting.
Yes.
We've been told for decades that gender is a social construct. Gender is a social construct. Like you said, you started researching this in the early 90s. It's been over 30 years of research. What do you have to say about that?
Before she talks, I'm going to talk. She interested. Yeah, gender is a social construct. It's one of the most absurd things ever. Gender is based upon the fact that God created a man in his image and then created a woman in the image of the man, as 1 Corinthians 11 speaks of. And gender is based upon basically your chromosomes, right? A man has X and Y, and a woman has XX, and that's what creates your gender. So that's the bottom line as far as gender. Gender is not a social construct. Yeah, you only a fool would say that. That's like saying 2 + 2 can be 5. But again, these are satanic ways. That, as Paul said, we're not ignorant of his schemes. Well, this is kind of like one of the dumbest schemes ever, but for somehow, in some way, people like, yeah, yeah, men and women aren't different. The days of, the orc have begun in many ways, if you will. It's like the morano in the Greek, right? The fool. So it's unbelievable how people argue for something that is so absurd genetically, from a chromosome standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, from a biological standpoint. It's just absolutely insane, right? But that's why she laughs so loud, because she's not stupid, right?
I laughed because my nursing mother daughter was said to her, and she she grabbed her breasts and says, "This is not a social construct. Milk comes out of these. That child has had nothing but what comes out of these. That's not a social construct." And
It's called
it's not a social
biology.
construct. We have social construct around, of course they're going to arise, because for millennia, women have been the smaller and weaker gender in a survival context in which strength meant everything. As a warrior, as a hunter,
By the way, she's talking about it as if it were a past thing, but see, hiddenly and secretly, it's a present reality. And reality is, if you look at all the jobs that require this society to go around and to survive, the oil industry, right? Have you ever seen what it looks like or working on an oil rig before? Those dudes working on the big drill bits, going in and extending them and whipping that chain around and undoing the next one and putting it on, and bam. I mean, how quickly can you lose an arm in that situation? It's insane. How about shipping? Those big anchors, they hit the thing, and the big anchors, and it's like, how quickly would it turn you into gravy if that thing hit you? I don't think women are going to line up for that one. What about masonry? Let's take it down to masonry. Women are going to sign up for chucking blocks, right? Building retainer walls or houses or any kind of stonework. Women aren't going to sign up for that one because it's absurd. Well, yeah, they only if there's other women they could talk to about it, right? So even the designers, though, most designers are men. Why? Architects, because it requires them to be silent for a long period of time and not talk, and women like to chitter chatter amongst themselves and enjoy it, and that's a blessing. Good, they enjoy that kind of thing. Men don't enjoy that kind of chitter chatter, right? They're like, noise, as opposed to the women who somehow have this infinite buffering system in their body that allows them to perpetually hear people talking, and it doesn't bother them, right? Whereas a man, that does bother them, right? They going into my room, get away. After a while, I've had enough, right? And so we're very different, and so it's funny. What she's saying is this: in the past, yes, there were added aspects to society. People weren't building cities. They were building cities, but they were also surviving, right? They were out hunting, gathering, and the women were gathering, and the men were hunting, and they were building more primitively. So it was more visible due to the necessity of things. But how many women are working in the electrical field up as linemen, putting in the electricity that they put their makeup onto, or the plumbing in the cities and running all that big pipe out there that runs down to all the cities. There's very, 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 very few women, right, doing that. Very few in construction. Very few under heavy construction, even on the design side, right? Because in order to design something, like I said, you have to stop, think, and just be quiet and just do your work for long periods of time. And that's not something natural to a woman. A woman can do it, but due to all the studies, they won't enjoy it. That's the difference.
I'd argue too, we break down a lot faster. Like we have a much shorter work life in that realm. Like there might be some women in some of those categories, but
Right.
they're young.
Yes.
Yeah, they're young and
Well, they're
sharp.
young, and by the time they're 30, what do you see? You see YouTube videos of them breaking down, crying, saying, "I was betrayed. I was tricked. You know,
Yeah.
I just want to be at home with a husband and have a child and some chickens and whatnot." And, you know,
My own friends say that.
yeah, you deceived me, world. Right? So, yes, a woman can put forth the effort and enjoy maybe the initial sort of excitement of being a career person. But it'll wear off after a while, because after a while, all the cuteness is gone. And now it's just the grind. And once you get to the grind, woman's like, I have no interest in the grind. Right?
So we break down, like physically, we break down a lot faster. Like leg
Yeah.
breaks, I keep, my muscle doesn't just hold out.
Right. Testosterone's not there for a woman to recover physically in time to get up the next day and just haul 70-pound blocks, right? Right. So it would just, after a few, like, whereas, you know, we hired some people to work, put in a wall for us. You just day after day, just out there grinding, just picking up those blocks. It's insane. You think, wow, just dudes are just tough as nails, right? You don't see any women out there because they just grind them into powder. You know, they could do it for a day and then they'd be like laid up for. Yeah, even for me, hauling a 70-pound block around all day long, at the end of the day, you're feeling like, wow, yeah, that's a little sore,
That
a little sore in the old back.
Like 10 times less efficient.
It could be a lot slower. Yeah, it wouldn't be the best thing to do to hire those in that situation for sure.
As a defender of one's family, strength meant everything.
Yeah.
And so
Still does,
we
by the
were
way.
thought of as less useful. That we were less useful. But if you listen to men, we were never less important.
Right.
We're the reason. we're women and
What she's
children
about to
first,
say.
right?
What she's saying is women aren't useless. They're the reason men work, right? Without women, men would just like shack up in a tent somewhere, go fish and hang out, right? Why would I want to build a big house? Or, to protect my family, to give them not just protect them, but I want them to be happy. I want them to be comfortable. I want the air conditioning to work. I want the water to run. I want to see smiles on my family's faces as they walk through the house and they enjoy the beauty of the home. They enjoy a nice shower. They enjoy the clothes that they wear. And so women and children are the motivation behind the man's work and happiness. Without that, no cities would have been built if dudes were around. It would have been dudes sitting beside the creek, fishing, right? Maybe, blowing themselves up with some gas on a fire, seeing how high they could jump off of something, whatever. So dudes would just, if somehow it was only men, the world wouldn't have become a very sophisticated place. Sophistication happens because men care for women and children. But like I said, it's a social contract. A contract is men amongst men create a safe environment so that their women and children can go about to school, to work, or to the grocery store, to the park. And they know while the man is off working, the other men in the society will protect them and care for them. That's the way a society is supposed to work. Then you get these feral, primitive, third world environments that get brought into this place where it's supposed to be a trusted place. Like when I was growing up, everybody left, nobody locked their doors. I mean, nobody thought about that. It was almost an insult. Everybody knew one another. Everybody cared for one another. somebody's kid was hurt, you knew that the neighbors were going to look out for them. If somebody needed something to eat, the neighbors would, kick a banana out the window or whatever it would be, or you'd come drink from the water hose. It was always like somebody caring for you. And everybody knew which houses not to be around and which houses to be around, and all the kids played together. And so there was an integrity to the social dynamic because men trusted men, right? Whereas when men cease to be the leaders, the entire thing breaks down because then it becomes this emotional, experiential thing as opposed to a rational thing based in strength. So what she's saying is absolutely true.
The reason for what they do. So, which to them trumps everything. And misidentifying use and value and equality in terms of rights. Like, since I was born in 1960, I remember my mother celebrating that she could get credit in her own name. Right? That was huge. And not early 1900s, women were considered too stupid to learn to type. Right? And then we were considered too stupid to do anything but type. Right? And so all these kinds of things that evolve as change is trying to happen, and what we can do, and then being empowered and showing we can do even more. And all of that would have worked really well if we didn't have underneath so much fear and anger at feeling mistreated and devalued. So as soon as we...
Let me stop that. Yeah, because what she says, what we can do. Women have this like mindset today. Oh, I can do what a guy can do, or look what we can do. It's like, who cares what you can do? It's not matter what you can do. It's what should you do, right? What makes sense to your happiness in life? Because a lot of women, like I said, they go off and say, well, I can be an engineer, and then they get into it and they're like, okay, I hate engineering because it's not my thing, right? They tend to want to go be a nurse or something that involves people, selling something involving people, interacting with people, because they love to interact with people, because that's the women's natural proclivity. And that's a great thing, right? Because if they didn't love interacting, then they wouldn't want to like sit down and read books with their children and teach their kids and interact with each other and learn and grow that way. So it's not about, it's like somehow Satan convinced women that they needed to prove that they could do anything that a man could do, and that they're less of a human being unless they prove that in their lifetime. In fact, they can do things a man can't do, right? And then whatever. It's like, what are you talking about? Who gives a rat's, right? What the heck are they talking about? Men don't think that way. Men aren't competing with women. Women are competing with the ghosts of men, if you will. Men are competing with women. Men don't think, dude, I wish I could stretch my leg like that, or do a cheer. They don't think in terms of the great things that women could do. Men go, wow, that's great. You can do these things that are harder for men to do. Men are like, great, that's wonderful. Moving on, right? They don't care. But women are, I am strong too. I'm this. I can do that. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, who cares? Are you happy doing it? Not really. All right then. What the heck? What are we talking about here? Why are we even doing this? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? It's not about what they can do. It's about should they be doing it. Somebody says, oh, well, they could go to war. Yeah. Do they want to go to war? Do they want to die miserably? They want to see their friends all? Imagine D-Day. All a big thing full of women, right? Right? A big little boat, square boat, full of women. They all got their guns. The tail drops. They drop into 3 to 5 feet of water. Half of them are 5'2" anyway, right? They're going to drown, right? Because the waves and tides are coming in. A lot of guys drowned, but they never even made it off the boat hardly without. All of a sudden, the guns start hitting the boat. You know what the guys did? They would go, 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 running into the gunfire and just ignoring the gunfire on D-Day, right? And watching, it doesn't matter, my friend was there, now his head's gone, boom, right? And you keep going. His arm got blown off. You keep going because you have to survive, to accomplish the mission. You don't think in terms of survival, you think in terms of accomplishing the mission. What would happen if the gate dropped on D-Day with a thing full of women and the gun starts firing? What would all of them do? They would drop straight to the ground and scream, please have mercy, don't kill us, right? You might have one of them, right? Some beastly woman that was raised by a large feral man that, tries her best, but most of them are going to scream for mercy, right? They're not going to have the mental resolve. Why? Not because they're lesser, but because that's not the way God designed them to be. He designed them to survive, so if the men do die, they can go home and raise the kids and bring up the next generation. They're not made to go out. They're not designed that way. They're designed to preserve themselves, and that's a good thing. Men are designed to go and protect and fight and provide and do all that thing. So for a woman, when she says they have anger and resentment, a man never ever, if he does, he's really jacked up. In general, I should say, a man will never ever have anger and resentment against a woman being able to do something he can't do. Right? Or he finds hard to do. He won't. Men don't care. Which means that women are in some sort of bewitchment to think that they need to attain to the levels of whatever of a man. It's like, no, you don't. Celebrate the glory of your womanhood and understand it and thrive in that.
Who do you think we're fighting against when, in our heads, when we say that?
Well, you're fighting against I believe, you're fighting against your own inherent understanding that without men, women would die. Right? In other words, they would be, things would not go well for them. The infrastructure of the United States, if all the men disappeared, who would take care of the electricity? Right? Who would take care of the plumbing? Would the women even know what to do? The whole thing would begin to go down. And then women aren't loyal and chivalrous like men, right? They're survivalist. So they're going to start foraging, collecting, protecting themselves. That means against other women, right? And it's not going to go well. It would be a complete meltdown. Women think, oh, without men, it'd be great. No. Who would keep up the roads? Who would make the electricity go? Who would make the plumbing work? Who would design? Who would make the gasoline? Who would get the oil? The whole society would shut down within a month or less. That's what I'm saying. The plants would just either melt down or stop working, and the whole thing would just go to pot. And then you would have a bunch of feral cats out there seeking survival, because that would be their natural instinct would be say, I need to survive. I need to survive. Whereas a man tends to be, I need to thrive. I need to thrive. And both are good, but in a feral extreme context, not so good, right? And that's why it's important to understand your natural instincts so you can value them and you can mold them and you can develop them in a way that makes sense to the meaningfulness of a relationship, as opposed to ride your feelings and always go on your feelings and wing it. It's the worst thing you can do, right? The worst thing you can do.
God, as communication expanded, how people succeed changed. It's no longer muscles, it's mouth. And we got mouths.
Right? It's she said,
it wasn't doing everything the right.
Perceived change. Now things get done through the mouth. It's not true. In reality, things are still done through the muscle. you don't see it as much as you used to.
Way. It was, what other ways could we do it that have more possibilities and reach more people and be more profitable and be more everything? And so as what we do naturally became more valued, but not rewarded equally, which been interesting studies about that. Women just tend to not ask for as much. And then there's the whole thing, well, he's got a family to support, right? We shot holes in that a long time ago. So yes, lots of social constructs out of things that were never true, that
Lost you for 1 minute.
have changed.
No.
You know, the way things work has changed so much. But gender is real from the point of view of our bodies and male and female coding in a man's sperm that in the 21st day of gestation expresses itself, causes a flood of testosterone or a flood of estrogen that literally starts shaping the brain, the organs, the muscles, the bones, all of that, like instantly is gone wild. And that's real. There are real structures in the brain, for example, the corpus callosum, for example, different thicknesses,
I feel her pain.
which has to do with how much information can travel and where, and things we've seen about when men get into their 50s and 60s and their testosterone levels naturally decline, their brain is rewiring, including hooking the verbal centers up to everything else. And also they have a whole lot they can say, in that wisdom that they've been developing over decades that's been trapped behind a missing connection. All of a sudden it's there. And
It's not trapped. A man, as he develops wisdom, tends not to speak. Because he's a wise man anyway. What she's saying is it's true. We tend to hold on to our wisdom until it's time to say it. Whereas a woman wants to know it now. You know, a man will develop over years and years and years wisdom and not assume and be patient until he sees the whole field. And then, as she says, that's when the Proverbs talks about the wisdom of the old man, the gray hair. Which I'm trying to avoid, right? You're trying to stay young enough, long enough to where you can't really avoid it. It's coming. But the gray hair represents the years of stockpiling knowledge intellectually, then applied in context. Those contexts result in wisdom and understanding, and that then results in a compartmentalizing through the years. And as you compartmentalize it, you build these sort of warehouses of wisdom based in certain areas, and then you have finally something to say to the next generation. And sometimes that comes a little sooner with guys if they have a good father and good grandfather and they can get wisdom passed down quickly. And sometimes it comes a little later due to just the fact that they lack that extra care. What she's saying is true.
available, and their worth to the tribe is completely altered, and now they're risk averse, and they're ashamed of being risk averse, but they don't know it's natural. You're risk averse because you are the tribe's asset. We can't afford to lose you hunting. We can't afford to lose you at war. Your wisdom is critical to our future.
Right.
What else do you want to say about that, right?
This gets into the next area I want to go about toxic masculinity. So
Oh, God.
you mentioned
This woman.
the reality of biology and the hardwired differences of men and women, which we could explore endlessly. It's beautiful, right?
Yes.
What do terms like toxic masculinity do to men today?
Oh, what do the terms do to men? Oh my
That
God.
construct, that toxic masculinity is a thing, and how does that impact men?
Yeah, the fact that people think it's real, they talk about it like it's real.
I want to answer that real quick before she goes on. Give her more dignity there. What does it do to men? if you're unwise as a man, you don't understand your masculinity, it confuses men. It's been used as a way to trick men into devaluing their God-given masculine traits by saying, as they said earlier, that they're not necessarily necessary anymore. Things like that. And by demasculating them, by tricking them into devaluing their masculine traits, they then become no longer attractive to women. They become friends of women as opposed to attracted potential mates, which is the trick. And of course, this creates this unbelievable tension of frustration in these young men who believe that they can't win. Like, oh, women are, a lot of them are like, oh, women just, they're all messed up, and they are, in many of them. But a lot of it is, even if a guy is attractive, he's so devalued his masculinity in his upbringing and in his life, he doesn't have a rhythm of how to apply it in life, and therefore is not skilled at doing what the bird does in the forest, right? He comes and flaps his feathers and his wings, and he does his little dance, and he understands what attracts the female and what wants to bring her in, and he understands his masculine beauty, his masculine strength that is attractive, that puts off the right expression to make a woman value him. Whereas today, when we're like, oh, a man ought to be like a woman, basically, is what they'll say. And then, of course, the women want nothing to do with them. They want to be friends with them, but they don't want to have any kind of relationship with them that is meaningful and long term. And so this is what's happened to men, is they have,
They use and abuse.
yeah, women have somehow convinced Satan through the world, through Eve, if you will, convinced them to bite the apple, convinced them that their masculinity is bad, that it's toxic to women, toxic not to men, but to women, toxic to women, and therefore they need to be feminized. And by feminizing them, now they're unattractive. And so now they think, oh, I'm doing this really well. I'm playing a very feminine role very well as a man. And what's wrong with the women? Hey, knucklehead. It's time to completely wake up and renovate and go back to no. The problem is I believe the lie of the woman in this world, the false conventional wisdom, Satan through the sort of the feminist movement that has tricked men into following it and thus led them down a dark road.
Just it comes to mind how devastating that can be if you're in a relationship and that man actually finally diagnoses the issue is him allowing himself and giving himself over. Remaining in that relationship and changing the dynamic can be a bomb, devastating. It's possible to turn it around, but
What do you mean?
if a man is in a relationship with
Yep.
a woman and that man has been in that relationship playing the role of a feminist man,
Right.
and now he recognizes that's why he's frustrated. He recognizes
Yeah, once he recognizes it, right.
changing that is devastating.
Yeah, well,
He
it
has
is
to
and it
lose
isn't,
it.
right? Because the woman, he's already lost the woman.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It-
He's
it-
already lost.
It's
the woman.
devastating, but it's not devastating because it's the only hope for the relationship to actually be truly meaningful and for him to get what he wants. He has to completely reinvent himself, which means he has to accept the process of her battle, which is he has to learn to stand as a man, represent himself, to fight the battles intellectually and stand in his place. And watch her crash. I always say, a man, it has to be a rock that the water crashes against, or you have to be a rock that your wife crashes against. And ironically, the more she crashes against you and you're not moved, the more safe and comfortable and attracted to you she feels, which is the crazy thing. It looks like the opposite because she's battling you, But the harder you stand, and the more sound in judgment you are, and the more fixed you are in your convictions, the more attractive you become to the woman. Who the very woman is trying to tell you, you shouldn't act this way, you shouldn't be this way. And the more you are, the more you're actually now, your feathers are starting to come out, and she says, "Oh, I like that little red stripe on the feathers. That's pretty cool. I like that little dance he just did."
You can see that sometimes in movies when the man actually takes a stand, they're like, oh, okay. They
Yeah.
may look reluctant on the outside, but you can tell that they're like, oh, the feathers just came out.
Yeah. Exactly. He's very vigorous, Father. Right, Zara? He's very vigorous.
I remember.
Is it real?
Is it real?
No, not unless toxic femininity is real.
Well, I would say that is real, actually. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah, and it's when I first started
Both are-
studying men and the difference between men
I
and
can say
women.
this. Anything can be perverted, right? So obviously there is toxic femininity and there's toxic masculinity, i.e. Islam,
Masculinity isn't
right?
toxic
If you
in
look
and
at
of itself, and femininity
masculinity is not
is not toxic
right.
if it's femininity,
Right.
it's
But the-
perverted masculinity.
Yeah, a masculinity that is perverted
Yeah.
is toxic to a society. Again, look at the things that are going on in Europe, the UK, Scotland, Ireland, France, all the places, and the United States too, but it's less. We've got it more, at least getting it more under control in the general flow of the nation, and you see it in the cities and in the politics, where you see things out of control. But the nation itself is being held together with a lot more stability. But when you see a people who've been raised to think that masculinity is this utter dominance over women, like the Islamic religion, that women are basically like dogs or cattle. Basically, I would say dogs because they're not allowed to have dogs. Dogs are unclean to them, but cattle, right? They're just their purpose is to have babies and to be pretty and clean, cook and rub my feet and all that stuff. And like she said, back in the old days, women might not have felt important, but hey, we didn't need typewriters back in the day, right? We needed somebody to chop wood. In an environment where you just needed people to chop wood, the woman wasn't all that handy, right? But when the Industrial Revolution happened, all of a sudden now you could have a whole room full of somebody just sitting doing a very finite thing, like sewing or moving a needle through something or typing or putting a part in a place, like in the Ford, when Ford created the assembly line. Now all of a sudden a woman or a man could do this job because it was just a very simple small part being put in a thing, and it was different, which is why women were used a lot of times on the assembly lines created by the Ford company and other companies in order to work toward World War II and whatnot, and produce all the things that they did for the war.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so, and of course, after the war, they generally went right back into their former roles in the 50s, and women went back to wanting to be housewives and to support their husbands. But then it slowly started kicking in, in the 50s and the 60s and 70s and 80s. The feminist movement started creeping. Yeah. So it's really hurt. It's hurt women, the toxic femininity. I would say if our society is anything, it's in our society in America, it's more toxic femininity than toxic masculinity. And I say that because the feminist movement is trying to redefine the natural, what is a healthy male to being a very unhealthy male. And men are confused because men have a desire to want to please their wives and want to please women. And because they have this desire to want to please it as a natural instinct, they give in to allowing the women to define them. And consequently, it's destroying them, leading them to depression, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and all kinds of trying to prove themselves in other masculine ways that are causing harm to them. And, a lot of suicides, a lot of terrible things are happening to men because of this wrong belief. On the other hand, in these other countries, it's definitely toxic masculinity. If you think in terms of how awful these cultures are toward women, in respect to how they're treated in countries like Afghanistan or in the Muslim countries, in many of them anyway, the way that they treat women as less than humans.
And I looked at it anthropologically. Like, what is the good reason for this? And there were so many things that I saw. Oh, the good reason for human beings being that way is survival. And when you look at men's instincts to procreate them, protect them, provide, which are also our instincts and everything on the planet, that protectiveness, that providerness, the warrior, right? The hunter and the warrior, and the instincts to, like, don't invest any energy in something you can't win at. That's a survival instinct.
Yep.
It protects you from dying, from spending more calories than you're catching. Well, so I looked at it all from that standpoint for a very long time. And then happiness showed up.
Yes.
Happiness has no survival purpose. Happiness is a spiritual quality.
Yeah.
Happiness is a connection. It's one of the things that shows up in a connection to God. And yet men thrive in the presence of happy women.
Mm-hmm.
They choose women to marry that they think they can make happy.
That's true.
They want to know how to make us happy, but making us happy has to come after being safe. So to them, first I'll make you safe, then I'll try to make you happy.
Right. That's important. Yeah, man does think that way. He thinks priority-wise rather than making you happy. He has to do his responsibility first, which is to provide, make sure there's food for you, make sure there's protection for you, and make sure that in that he's leading you. Whereas a woman,
us, if we don't feel safe, nothing makes us happy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this spiritual quality where people are, when they experience it, they're more creative, more open, more loving, more connected, more teamwork, more everything. It's magic. It's a miracle. And as this started coming together, I was like, I'm sorry, evolution is not this good. Evolution is clunky. This is beautiful.
Right.
This is too beautiful to continue to think this evolved over time.
Yeah.
There's something really
It's nice
beautiful
to hear
about
her
it.
coming out of her
But
former
since we're not
beliefs into an understanding of
seeing what
God
is the beauty, what are the
actual
complementary
basis of
strengths,
the design,
since we're not
for men,
looking for
men and women.
them, we're not seeing it. I mean, seek and ye shall find. If you're not seeking, it could be right in front of your nose. You won't see it. And
She's quoting the Bible on this one. She may have. Good for you.
like the thing I
Good
think
for
we
you.
were
Go,
talking
girl.
about in July, that men know their weaknesses. They're very clear about what their weakness is, and they consider themselves weak at things that we would think they would never think that about themselves.
Right. Did you see that? I sent you that funny, we've seen it before, that gym, a man and a woman at the gym, you know.
He's like, I am not good.
I am worthless. I deserve nothing. You know, you are weak. You must work hard in order to defeat your enemy. She's like, I'm a strong, independent woman. You know, I don't need a man. I have 5 reps if I don't need a man. I don't need a man. He's like, you know, I must defend my family. He goes back to the guy. I must protect my family from the foes of this world and whatever. I am weak. I'm pathetic. This is, you know.
Yeah, every
She's
time
like,
I stop,
I am such. I'm.
get more power.
Yeah, every time I stop. Right.
Nothing less than after
Yeah, that's right. The woman's like, I think I'll have a matcha later. You know, she's doing a little leg extension. Anyway, it's true. Like the man is like, he sees himself as weak in order to keep pushing himself to be strong. He sees himself as ignorant so he can be smart. He sees himself as naive so he can be wise. If he is a normal, healthy male, if he's been feminized, you see him being the opposite. Now, instinctively, a man can find his instincts pretty quickly if he is amongst men. But man, a lot of guys are perverted today. Yeah, Grace.
Is there anything healthy about a woman not thinking that way?
What do you mean?
Just, I think it's fairly healthy for a woman to think the same way, right, about herself, to
Well, of
be
course.
grateful and to operate humbly. You know?
That's why it says teach women to be sensible,
Mhm.
right?
Okay. I'm
As
sitting here
opposed
like,
to-
wait, is there something wrong with me? Because that's why I work out. That's
Yeah.
No, a woman. No, the woman in the video is the perverted feminine approach. Where I don't need a man, all this nonsense. It's like, no, she should be thinking, I work out so I can support my man, so that I can look good for my man. I can be sexually attractive to my man. My body can be strong so that I can raise children, because sometimes a woman does need to fight off danger. She needs to be strong enough to carry children and to defend them if she needs to. She needs to be strong enough to pick them up and carry them if she needs to. She needs to be strong enough to to take care of to have the endurance, if you will, to care for kids and herself and her husband and the home and other things like that as well. And that means being in the gym, being physically fit is part of that, because in the old days, she didn't need to be physically fit. She was out there like helping the husband in the field, foraging and picking berries or planting plants or pulling rock, taking small rocks out of the field, whatever. You're getting plenty of exercise. But now we don't get that. And so, women used to be if you look at videos of women in the 1800s, they're all super thin. They fit, they have good posture. Whereas nowadays they're young, fat, overweight, bad posture. The cell phone is like, she created this new neck bone thing where somehow, I don't even know how the neck bends that far forward. And it's this weird thing. It's all jacked up. So yeah, staying in the gym, keeping your body in shape, keeping yourself doing good. It's very, very important. But doing it for the purpose of love and for support and for care, rather than saying, yes, I must be strong. I must not be weak. I must be beautiful. Rather than a man doesn't say I must be beautiful. He says I must be strong. A woman should be saying I must be beautiful. I must be strong. I must be fit for my family. I must be able to do the things I need to do in order to care for myself and my family. What?
It's it's a faith decision as opposed to just like some kind of self-motivation.
What's the same with the man, though? A man's a faith decision to be in shape, care, and do all these things. But love should be the primary motivator, even though, their faith is driving them. Love should be the mechanism, if you will, the outworking of it.
But their instinct is to conceal weaknesses, conceal anything that can be used against them, which includes their strengths. They conceal their strengths, their weaknesses, their plans, their attachments.
And the reason why that's the case is because anybody's strength their greatest strength is your greatest weakness, right? Because your instincts are your greatest strength, and yet untamed and naively applied, they are your greatest weakness, because you could be a fool in how to apply how you're living them out. You can be too emotional. You can be too fearful. You can be too courageous. A man being too courageous and blowing himself up, whatever. What I mean is just doing some kind of thing that harms him. Let me jump on the back of this bull and just ride this crazy thing, So I saw there's a video of a guy who's in the woods and he's with his wife or his girlfriend. I'm not sure. And it just shows the perfect contrast between the man and the woman. There's a man standing there, and he's not even a fit, strong man. He's just a man. And the woman, and the moose turns and starts coming to him fast. And the woman runs off, and he just instinctively goes, rah! And he just, screams at the bull moose, and the bull moose stops and goes, like, oh, okay, like, I'm out, I'm leaving. Like, he did the feral thing, right?
Yeah.
He did the feral thing, which was fight and to protect my woman. She took off running, right? Why? That's her job. Take off running. His job is to protect, take the kids and run, right? His job is to fight so she can get away. And it was this beautiful picture that showed the feralness of both parties that look, oh, well, she betrayed him. No, she's doing her job. He's doing his job. But it was cool because he had no time to think. He had to do his instincts, and it was so cool. I love that video because it honors, in a way, both parties in the mix of it. Yeah.
And because they're aware of their own weaknesses when they're looking for a partner, whether it's someone to marry and raise a family with, or someone to have be part of their company or team, they're looking for complementary strengths. So men choose women that they admire for the different strengths that she has that he knows he doesn't.
If they're wise. Oftentimes, men will think they see those strengths, and because they're just too young or naive to understand. It is important when you don't have as she was talking about, the gray-haired, valued, wise man to teach down to the younger men. It's not that they're picking a bad woman; they're just not maybe necessarily picking the woman that's fit for their lives, and thus, it's the match isn't quite there. Now, in Christ, anything can be mended, and anything can be anybody can mature and grow and develop and but all of you, we have a gaggle of kids here, and all of you are different, right? All the girls are different, and so that means you have a guy that God is preparing for you specifically that you fit to support him. And so that's why we pray all the time, God, prepare, keyword, prepare a man for grace, prepare a man for faith, prepare a man for children that make sense to their lives, that they can support, that will be a proper fit, that will be a blessing to both parties, right?
On that note, just something I'm sure you can expand on. Heard people sometimes talk about, like, oh, but what if he's not the right one? What if I'm making a mistake?
Well, that's an emotional fear-based thing. It can be intellectually quantified. There's a rational process by which you would go about wondering if somebody's the right one. Number one, are you attracted to them physically? Number two, are you attracted to them pheromonally? And that the only way you know that is if you make sure you're not taking any birth control pills, right? Because that ruins your ability to know who you're actually attracted to. This happens to a lot of young girls. It changes your physical and your smell. And so a lot of times women who will get married to someone, they'll get off of it to have a baby, and then they're no longer attracted to their husband. They don't understand why. Because the pheromones didn't match up. God made us to have the pheromones that come from all the different places that we smell and sense, and that disrupts them. But so you want to make sure that is there. You want to make sure that, of course, you're unified as two children of God. You want to make sure in Christ. You want to make sure that your faith is unified with Christ in that way. You want to make sure that his ambition and his desire in life under God and Christ's administration is something that you personally groove with. Like, yeah, he wants to be a missionary. Yeah, I can't wait to go out and do this. Like, no, most people are like, nah. Some people are like, great. Other people are like, not so much, right? Why? Because it's not something to frown upon. It's something to say, oh, that's just not my gig, right? That's not my jam. In the same way that I'm not called to be a missionary, I'm a pastor teacher, a man of God in that way. Um, I've never really had a desire to do that. I like to share the gospel and do mission trips and whatnot, but a full-time missionary is not my calling. Evangelion, a good news giver, as a primary ambition is not mine. My calling. And therefore, I would imagine that God wouldn't give me a wife that wanted to do that, right? And also, my calling as a pastor teacher, I'd need to be married to someone who valued that. Otherwise, if I was married to a woman who valued a white picket fence and living in one place her whole life and having a certain house and living in her family and blah, 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 it's like, okay, definitely not the right pick for me. So everybody's got a person that they match better as far as physically, physical attraction, from a visual standpoint, from a hormonal standpoint. And the reason why is because your body's telling each other that your kids will be strong if you match up like this. And from a administrative standpoint, it can't just be looks. It has to be, and pheromones, it has to be administration. Because marriage is a contract of administration. It is an authoritative context by which you're saying, I'm choosing to come into God's administration for your life, guy, if you're a woman. And therefore, I want to be a help to whatever Christ has for you. But you need to know up front, is this guy's ambition something that I groove with? If that makes sense. So that can be quantified.
That every marriage should be treated like a business partnership, and every business partnership should be treated like a marriage.
Yeah, it's wise, for sure. Because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's a contract, and that contract and in the world, the contract's like, oh, both parties have to be happy, both parties, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, in under Christ, it's God's the head of Christ, Christ is the head of the man, and the man is the head of the woman, and 1 Corinthians 11:3. And so you have to understand that God's not going to lead the man through his wife. He's going to lead the man directly in his heart, in his mind. And if the woman doesn't come to support that, she's defrauding him, and she's undermining Christ's leadership in his life, and it's an offense to God the Father, and it harms the administration of God, which is to carry out the good news of Christ and the administration of Christ in this world. And so it's offensive in that way, right? Profoundly offensive for people to think, oh, the woman, is there to lead her. No, the woman's not there to lead her husband. God will never lead a husband through a wife, ever. However, men trip up and want to bite Eve's apple, if you will, because they love their wives so dearly and they want them to be happy. Just because God doesn't lead the husband through the wife doesn't mean the husband's ambition isn't almost grossly bent toward loving his wife, even to the point of betraying your calling under God through Jesus Christ. Men do it all the time. They don't know they're doing it until later, but then they do it. But they do. So it's good discussion.
Now, that's awesome. And then it gets messed with, because one of the things that came out of feminism, and there's a lot of good that came out of it, but one of the bad things that came out of it is women believing that we shouldn't need a man. And that if we can prove we don't need a man, we'll be that much more attractive to him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness gracious.
And it's the
it's the opposite. It's the opposite.
He's looking for a woman he admires, and he needs her strengths to expand his own possibilities.
No, if a woman doesn't, a man lives to care for his woman. If a woman says, I don't need you to care for me, then he's not needed. It's completely unattracted to the woman. And so this whole new wave of women and, seeking to be independent, self-sufficient, and strong is harming them. It's harming their attraction big time. And so the irony is, like I asked every group of women I've ever asked, no matter how liberal or conservative, Do you want a man who's smarter than you or dumber than you?
Smart.
Do you want a man who's richer than you or poorer than you? You want a man who's stronger than you or weaker than you?
Strong.
It doesn't matter who you are. They can't help it. They'll say it through gritted teeth. They're stronger, richer, smart. But what you're saying is you want somebody superior, right? And it doesn't matter what category. You're saying that because, yeah, that's your natural instinct. A man would never say he wanted a smarter woman, a richer woman, or a stronger woman. He would never say that. In fact, a man doesn't care if a woman's wealthy or any of that. He cares if she fits his life physically, hormonally, and administratively. That's what he cares about. It doesn't matter if she's working, at the local McDonald's or whatever, and he's driving through and he's, oh, there's this beautiful girl. Beauty, check. Pheromone, check. Now we learn her background and her family line to see if she matches up and she would be a good fit. Check. She doesn't need to. In fact, wealth is a distraction, right? Wealth can be a negative for a guy because then he has to work around that. Whereas if she's not wealthy, it's less burden. It's less baggage she's bringing in because now he can come in and feel like he's so proud to give this person who doesn't have a lot a blessing in life. But if a woman has blessing in life and he comes along, he's like, well, I can't give her that much blessing. Now he doesn't feel like he's able to care for her, right? So it's not as exciting. It's not fun. Right? When I say when we were young, she was a roommate with a few little girls, and I had my little house, and I felt so proud, to be able to provide a house, this little 800 square foot house. It was a house on some land, and it was a big deal, and it was pretty awesome, and we were so proud. But can you imagine, like I need to marry somebody poor. Because if I drove up to Dad's house, and Dad's house is this big house, and she's coming out of the mansion, and I'd be like, well, I got this little like servant quarters over here you could move into. Aren't you excited? So unless the woman values the process of the man becoming great, it's going to be a hard shift for her. She would have to understand that young men, they have to develop, they have to mature and grow into their greatness. And that takes some time. But from a guy's perspective, he would be like I'm living up not to the woman's expectations, but to her father's accomplishments. The man's not thinking about the woman's expectations. He's thinking about the father's accomplishments because what the father provided, I need to provide that too. And he needs to he's got to get that out of his head or it jacks him up.
Thus, we will be single forever.
Yeah, no, actually, see that
I know. I need to get a shack for you guys to live in so that you look like you're wearing like a potato sack dress and like I'm just sweeping off the porch.
That's why every time somebody comes in, I'm like, oh, so we kind of like built this place with our own hands,
They're like even more like making him like all the more, sweat. He's like, I can't build this place with my own hands. You say, well, ask my daddy to help. They're like, well, they just turn around and walk out the door and leave. They're like, all right. They drive up. You just see them back up. You're like, where's he going? I don't know. It's just throws a white flag out the window. I give up.
A small, but I think a good example of what you were saying is when we were at the homecoming dance. Like I was getting no requests for a dance, and so a slow dance song came on, and I was like, I'll just sit in the middle of the dance floor and just kind of sway to the song. alone and see if anybody comes because I'm a helpless young lady. And eventually it worked. Like I
Yeah.
was like, I must provide a dance for this woman.
Yes.
You know?
See?
It worked.
Shrewd. If you're sitting over there on the thing, it looks like maybe you're disinterested.
Yeah.
But if you're out there dancing all alone, swooning,
Helpless dancer.
helpless, the man's like, I must save this damsel in distress. Provide her with the dancing experience. Right? So, she needeth me. It's good stuff. All right.
And ooh, look who we could be together. And what he wants the most from her is that she admires his strengths, but instead she's trying to prove that she's as strong as he is. She's trying to prove that she's as good as he is at everything. And he's like, I don't want someone who's like me. I chose you because you're different. Could you please keep being different instead of trying to be like me? And
That's the best thing about that comedian who said, you know, the best thing about a woman is she's not a dude. It's kind of the thing that makes me most attracted to him. He's not a dude.
No wonder.
That's what she says.
And
to him.
so this, what you might think of as social construct, messes with something inherently gorgeous.
God's design is so beautiful. I mean, you're so right that we don't remember because many of us maybe have been hurt or we haven't had the opportunity to live it out ourselves. I love that word you used, gorgeous, how gorgeous our complementary strengths are, men and women. One thing I look forward to every day are my bed.
Boom. I don't know what she's doing there. We got to like get past that part. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. 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 There we go. We could be done here. Well, this is since we have a.
I want to ask though, you mentioned feminism. That has some good in it. There's some issues. Would you call yourself a feminist today? Why or why not?
Nay.
And do you think feminism today is doing good?
I wouldn't. So I was a feminist. I was proving I could do everything. I laid carpet.
Oh.
I laid commercial carpet.
That's
Okay.
rough.
Which is when I was
rough, but-
proven I couldn't actually lift what
It
my
ain't-
boss could lift.
Not to say.
But
just couldn't lift the
I
carpet.
had the
You laid it,
T-shirt,
though.
and I wore it. A woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. I wore it proudly. Now, today I would not, first of all, say that I'm a feminist because women did not become more feminine. It is not feminism, it's femaleism. That's what is touted. That is what's
Yeah.
promoted. That's whose rights were fought for and whose superiority is espoused. So I would never today say I am a feminist.
No.
Both for the misnomer that it's not about femininity.
Yes, right.
And no more than I would say toxic masculinity, because masculinity isn't even what people think it is.
Yeah, what she's saying is, you know, you naturally wouldn't call yourself a feminist because feminists aren't feminine.
Right. Right.
Feminists are,
That's how you know it's a lie.
yeah, feminists are females trying to wear masculine clothing as an attributes, right? Through attribute application. And that is so far from feminist. That is females trying to compete with masculine energy. And it looks stupid, right? It looks like a kid wearing grandpa's suit. It just doesn't go. You just look dumb. And so it's to a man it does. To a woman, they're like, yeah, it's dudes, you know. They think you look cool. No, we don't. We don't think you look cool. We think you look ridiculous, you know. And right now our cat is in a feral mode right now. She's got her zoomies. All right. We'll finish this little section here and we'll move on for the night.
It's really everything we call masculine is organized around productivity. It's organized around safety and productivity, and we have as much access to that as men do, and we can do it well, and we can do it ugly. You can get really ugly, the instincts to survive. So what I like about what happened with the women's movement is that the degree of independence that women became able to experience in terms of supporting themselves and their children, without it, what I'm passionate about, which is partnership, we couldn't even have a conversation about partnership because dependency displaces partnership. So for that, I know it brought us a new possibility. It just got conflated with a lot of things, like we're equal because we're the same. What if we're equal because all of God's children are all of God's children? It's not for us to judge the value.
We're not equal. We're no more than all men are equal. No, all men cannot jump the same height and lift the same thing and have the same intellect and all that. Men aren't equal amongst themselves, much less women equal with men. But everybody plays their part and their value, right? And in that, there is an equality of value, not an equality of person. We're not intellectually equal people. We're not intellectually strong, or physiologically strong people. We're not athletically equal. That's what makes the Olympics, right? Showing who is superior on the earth, who is the fastest man, who is the fastest woman, who is the strongest man, who can throw this and do that and jump here and do this and so forth, right? The Olympics prove that there is no such thing as equality. There is just those who are the best at a particular thing, but those who are the best at karate are not the best at running, and those who are best at running are not the best at karate, right? So you have to understand the value that each person brings to the table is what creates the equality, the equality of appreciation, the equality of need, the equality of value in a society. All those things for sure, but not the equality of a person. That is ridiculous. And the more people strive for that, the more ridiculous they look. No more than, there'll never be a person who's 5'2" that can't jump a foot off the ground in the NBA. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how good they can shoot. They got to be able to run. They got to be able to jump. They got to be able to maneuver quickly. You're not going to find that, right? So there's not an equality in this world of men amongst men, women amongst women, men and women. There's just not an equality at all of any kind. There's equality, like I said, of value, not of mental or physical attributes or strengths, but of value, yes, value for sure. Because if someone understands where their strengths are, then like a symphony, like an orchestra, right, like the human body, as the Bible uses the illustration, that the toe is not less important than the fingers or the eye. In fact, when I think of Deion Sanders, the greatest DB and maybe one of the greatest football players of all time, he retired early on because of a turf toe. Turf toe made me angry. I mean, I want to see him play for years more. He's an absolutely amazing athlete and made football fun to watch, right? Turf toe, like insane. He did come back years later to play with the Ravens, but it was more like a parting gift. But he was amazing still, but of course not like he was when he was young. And so you think, wow, I mean, this great guy, one of the greatest of all times, his toe became the most valuable part of his body. You know what I mean? He could have lost an eye and still been just as good. But his toe, he could have lost some fingers and been just as good, but not without that toe, because that was his speed, right? His speed. Without his speed, you can't do it, and you got to have your toes for your speed and for your turning, your agility, and all of that. It's such a bummer, right? So all the body parts are equally important, but not equally as strong, right? And the same way in a symphony, all the instruments are amazing instruments by themselves. Some of them are more glorious than others, right? Can play the tuba, bom, 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 bom. If you like, this is not. You're not going to woo a crowd with a tuba, right? But with a violin, you will. But when you put it all together, it's amazing, right? The tuba, without the big drums, without the stuff, by themselves, it's not that great. But together, it's amazing. And so there's a quality of value within the context by which things truly find their groove. Yeah. All right, we'll stop here because I know you're about to be a quality of go to sleep, because you guys all go to sleep earlier than I do. And with that, we will call it an evening. I hope you all, if anybody was here, I don't know how to use this thing.
5 people.
Oh, we did? 5 or 6 people. I hope anyone watching enjoyed our time, and it was a blessing to you. And we'll continue this evaluation reaction video another time. Blessing.